up, everybody? Welcome to Legacy TV and the Convo podcast. And today we got another great episode, and I'm truly blessed for this gentleman here coming and taking his time today to come sit down with me and talk to me and help me with my podcast, get me out there more. And I have to tell you guys, this guy, to me, when I was coming up, was a legend. I almost even wanted to go train at his gym, and my coach Joe one day gave me his number and he said, call him. He'll look out for you. He'll tell you where to go. I called him. He was saying, go to Black House. You can see Kenny and da da da. And it just so happened at that time I was still a father and I couldn't make the back and forth to LA. So I never ended up coming to train, but I would have loved to have trained at the gym. The man has owned one of the coolest clothing brands that I ever had coming up. And I used to wear the patches when I used to compete, which was called SINISTER. And that's how I first had heard of Ed Soares, the manager to stars, the now CEO of LFA, Ed Soares. Thank you so much for being here today, brother. Thank you for taking the time. Man. It's an honor for me, bro.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man.
For sure, brother. So Ed, let's get right into it. You know, tell me, did you grow up out here? Because I know you're Brazilian.
Yeah. I was born and raised.
I hear you talk Brazilian. I'm like, I know he's Brazilian, but
yeah. I speak Portuguese. I spoke Portuguese at home growing up. My mom and dad are Brazilian, but I was born and raised in Redondo Beach. I'm from the South Bay. Very proud to be from the South Bay. And that's where I was raised.
So you grew up in LA, in Redondo Beach?
I grew up in Redondo Beach, man.
What was it like in those days? Like when you were growing up, was it gang banging out there?
I lived in North Redondo. So North Redondo is a little bit, the interesting thing about the South Bay is if you go 5 miles east of anywhere in the South Bay, you're in the hood. Yeah. So it's like a little paradise that's surrounded by hood. Yeah. So, it's definitely, I grew up in North Redondo, which, there were a lot of gangs there. I was bordered Lawndale and next to Hawthorne, and there was Northside Redondo, which is a lowrider gang. But it was kind of, my mom worked her butt off. I was raised by a single mom to be in the Redondo school district. So I was able to go to the Redondo school district, but I kind of was exposed to both. I was exposed to the kids who had a better life and had more money. And I was also kind of on the border of, a little bit of a hood. I'm not going to say that I was like starving or anything like that. My mom worked her butt off. Yeah, we grew up on Section 8 and we had food stamps doing all that. I mean, by no means were we loaded, but I never went to bed hungry or anything like that. You know what I mean? I thank God my mom always worked her butt off, and I didn't really know the difference. I didn't realize that we were poor until I got older, because there was always so much love in my house that, I never really, I can't say that I didn't know the struggle as you hear some people say.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we had a struggle, but my mom always made it seem like it was okay. There was so much love that made up for what we didn't have.
That's amazing. If you think about what you just said, is like, a good parent, what they can, like they might not have much, but being a good parent can make you feel like you're growing up in the richest household. Yeah, and the money doesn't matter at that point.
Well, I don't think money makes you rich, man. I think your life and what you have in your life and the people you have around you, the type of lifestyle that, just the people you have around you, that's what makes wealth. I tell my kids that all the time. I say, I've met a lot of poor people that have a lot of money, but just because you have a lot of money doesn't make you rich.
Hell yeah, I like that. That's a slogan. I got to put that in one of my new rap songs. That's some real things, Like I grew up, around a lot of people that were getting in trouble and they didn't have much money, but they in their household though they had so much love, they were so close to each other. Where you see people with money, they don't have that same environment that they have in some of those neglected places that that I've seen, and it's crazy. Like, yeah, it's so you just had a great mother that was taking care of you, and you had a someone that was looking out for you and working their butt off to make you have a good life at home.
You made me feel like a king.
That's awesome. What I mean? Shout out to mom.
Yeah, for sure.
So growing up in Redondo Beach, as you're going through junior high and high school, were you like, so you were swayed? Were you doing well in school? Were you doing good?
I never really did well in school. I mean, I did okay in school, I did okay in school. I wasn't dumb by any means. I was more concerned as I started getting a little bit older, I started getting exposed to what it was like to have money, what was not to have money. And, I could remember coming home and going, man, mom, and then, oh, how was it this week? And I'd be like, yeah, man, they got money. And she said, why do you say that? And I remember telling her, they got name brand soda. They got Sprite. We had lemon lime, the cola, black, so it's like little things like that. But like I said, I didn't really know the difference at the time. I knew that we had certain struggles, but at the end of the day, like I said, I was blessed. I had a great childhood. I had, I don't really have anything to complain about that. And I don't regret anything about that. I'm glad, the cards were dealt to me the way that they were, because it gave me, I was exposed to what a life would be like with having more success and more financial security. And even though I didn't have it, my mom gave me the security of life. So,
yes,
she gave me a security when I had nothing material. So it kind of,
were you the only child?
No, I was the youngest my mom had 6 kids.
So it was her and 6 of you guys?
Well, 2 of them were already older. So I was kind of raised with 3 older sisters in the house. And then the oldest of those 3 got married, and I was pretty young. And then I was raised with 2 of them. And so like my mom, she worked she cleaned houses during the day. She worked at a factory at night. So my one of my older sisters, Sonia, was the one who she was about 12, 13 years older than me. And she kind of took care of me and in a sense, raised me in a sense, even though my mom was there. But she was the one that really looked out after me and, picked me up from baseball practice. My love was playing baseball. I used to love playing baseball, man. And then obviously growing up by the beach, you start surfing and skateboarding, and that was kind of what I did. I lived about maybe 3-4 miles away from the beach. So, in the summer I would skateboard and ride my bike to the beach every day. And that was my life, at the beach. And sometimes people, in the South Bay, they think, oh, it's a beach. It's like, cowabunga, like surf, but it wasn't like that. It was like an urban beach. You know what I'm saying? It was like a little bit, almost kind of like hoodie on the beach. You know what I mean? So it was like, it wasn't like your, Huntington Beach, like surf, it wasn't like that. It was a little more, like I said, it was like an urban beach. It was a little bit more like a Venice almost, you know what I mean? Where it was a little bit more hardcore and,
which means there's drugs and gang activity.
Yeah,
other things like that going on.
You talk shit, you get socked up. People don't realize that. You get socked up. You know what I mean? And it's just like it wasn't like that. You kind of learn the ropes on the street, especially growing up with a single mom. You kind of, my mom was working all the time, so I kind of had to, in a way, fend for myself. Learn.
You didn't really have your male figure, so you were kind of. And I know, like, my parents, kind of split up when I was younger too, and I could relate to that. Relate to that.
But my mom was like my mom and my dad, and my mom was there to teach me all the characteristics that it takes to be a good man. And I remember, when I was like 16, I struggled in school just because I just didn't want to go to school. I wanted to think about making money and things and what I wanted to do in the future. And I remember I didn't go to my 6th period typing class because I was playing baseball, and I never transferred out of the class. I just said, I'm just not going to go. And I would just go to baseball practice. and then I ended up failing that class because I never showed up. And then I didn't have the grades to play baseball that my junior year. And I remember coming home and telling my mom, saying, Mom, I'm not going to play baseball this year. And I think, I'm behind on credits to graduate. And I said, I think I've, gotten just about everything I can get out of high school. And I'm just going to take the proficiency test and get out of school. And she says, what's your plan? And I said, I want to be a firefighter. That's what I wanted to be. So I went to school to be a firefighter. And I told her, I said, I want to take the proficiency test. I loved skiing at the time, snow skiing. So I said, one of my good friends in high school, was a part-time ski instructor up at Snow Summit in Big Bear. So every weekend we'd be going up to Big Bear skiing. And I got pretty good at skiing and I got into ski racing and doing that. So then I just told her, I said, hey, I want to take the proficiency test, get out of school, move up to the ski resort, and I want to take my fire science classes. And my goal is to get into the fire academy and be a firefighter. And that's what I want to do. I already know I don't need anything else in high school. Yeah. I've gotten everything I can get. And I remember my mom looking at me and saying, well, I got to tell you something. The only thing a man has in this life is his word. A man without his word doesn't have shit. So if you're telling me you're going to do that, you better do it. And I did it. And I took the proficiency test, got out of school, moved up to the ski resort. I'd be up at the ski resort from Tuesday to Sunday, come home on Mondays. My mom would do all my laundry. I'd go to take all my fire science classes on Monday. I took all day of fire science classes. I would drive up on Tuesday morning. I ski raced on Tuesday, taught skiing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Friday nights I'd race. And then I taught skiing Saturday and Sunday, and then drive back down the hill again. And I did that all winter long for 2 years. And then at 18 years old, I put myself through the fire academy. Got hired at Inglewood Fire Department on my 19th birthday.
Inglewood?
Yeah, Inglewood. And which I was born in Inglewood.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I was born in Inglewood. And then
shout out to Inglewood. Yeah. I have some homies from there.
Yeah. So I got hired on Inglewood Fire Department on my 19th birthday. And then I remember that was the first time in my life where I kind of felt a bit of arrogance. You know, I remember I got off the phone. It was on my 19th birthday. And the captain said, congratulations, Cadet Soares. You're welcome to the Inglewood Fire Department. And I remember at that time, it was really difficult to get on the fire department. And I remember I kind of thought to myself, yeah, man, you know, who said this was hard? Look, I did it, you know. And then 3 weeks late, and then I remember talking to the chief, and his name was Chief Hartzog at the time. And he goes, hey, I just want you to go down and take the pre-employment physical with all the recruits. And I said, Chief, isn't it the NFPA standard 1001 physical? He goes, yeah. And I go, I just did it for the academy. And he goes, well, you're right. But you know what? The rest of the recruits are going down there. Why don't you go down there? So when I went down there, I got a call back 2 weeks later saying, hey, man, we need to bring you in for further testing. And I was like, oh, what? And they're like, oh, just come in and take some more tests. And then that was on November 15th, which was on my birthday that I got hired. And then on December 8th, they diagnosed me with diabetes, and they told me that I couldn't be a firefighter, and I was just crushed.
Because of diabetes, you can't be. Is that still true?
Well, not to this day, but at that time, you couldn't be a firefighter. So I was crushed, you know, and then and so I was pretty heartbroken, and that was a rough year of my life, because that was all I wanted to do in my life, was be a firefighter. And I got hired under the department. I graduated #1 in my class at 19 years old. At 18, graduated, and then got hired on my 19th birthday. And then you know, 3 weeks later, they tell me I couldn't do the career that I wanted to do. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? So I went back. Moved back up to the ski resort and said, I'm going to teach skiing one more time. And then it was funny because I always wanted to ski race, you know, and I was never going to be good enough to be on the U.S. ski team because, you know, I started skiing too late.
Yeah.
These kids start racing at 5, 6, 7 years old. I started skiing at about 13 and really didn't get really into skiing until I was about 16, 17. So I was a good skier, but I wasn't I would have never been on the U.S. ski team. So I was training with all those guys because I was on the race department and I was coaching kids and all that. And I remember one of my coaches said, I know you're never going to be on the U.S. ski team. I said, I know. And he goes, but aren't you Brazilian? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, why don't you get your dual citizenship and represent Brazil in the Olympics, in the Winter Olympics? And I was like, yeah, man, that'd be cool. And I knew I would have never won. But just the thought
the
of
dream. It
was like the Jamaican bobsledding team. You know what I mean? It was like, I was just like, man, that would be pretty cool. So he said, why don't I set you up to be on an endless winter? So this summer, you can go to New Zealand, teach skiing and coach racing there and train all summer long. and just be on an endless winter. And then, we get the process going. So I was like, cool. So, so that was the winter of, obviously I just got, let go, just got told I couldn't be a firefighter. I went and taught skiing and worked on the race department that following year. Then in around the end of March, the season ended. And then I was going to go to New Zealand in the middle of May. And then what ended up happening is when I came back home for that month and a half, my mom's cancer came back. And this time it came back pretty bad. And I was there for her, and I ended up not going to New Zealand and taking her to do her chemotherapy, which to this day, man, it was the best choice I ever made.
Course.
You know what I mean? And then 9 days after my 20th birthday, my mom passed away. So in a matter of a year, it was a pretty rough year in my life because, I lost the career I wanted. I lost my mom, which was my everything. And I was the youngest. And, man, so it just, I got faced with adversity at a pretty young age.
A lot of pain and a lot of heartbreak at that time. Fuck.
And then at that point in time, I just kind of I was a little bit lost and just kind of did what I had to do,
bro.
Yeah. And then I had a little job. Like I worked at a restaurant at this restaurant called Chart House and which was a cool restaurant to work at. And then I kind of got into the nightclub scene. And what happened is I met this nightclub promoter at the time and he was a waiter at this restaurant and I was a busboy. And I said to him, and I was like, so tell me, what do you do with this night? And then he explained it to me as a nightclub promoter. And I said, so you're telling me all I got to do is bring people to the nightclub and I can get paid for it? And he's like, yeah. And I go, I could do that. He goes, well, why don't you host my night then? And that's how it started off. So at about 20 years old, I started hosting nightclubs and I started to be really successful at it. And then
like hosting nightclubs, like
I was like a host with a promoter. So I wasn't the promoter yet.
You were just getting,
I was getting people in there and then I was getting paid for that. And then
how much around would you think? Like not much,
that
but
time,
it was something.
Right there wasn't much. It wasn't much. But then what ended up happening is I started to build a good reputation for myself, and the guy taught me good, and he actually has passed away since then. His name was Andy Lehman,
Rest in
and
peace.
but he kind of got me into the nightclub scene, and my whole life I've always kind of. Fortunately, it wasn't on purpose, but I always I always believed in doing what you love. So like I was out at the clubs all the time. So I would be like with my friends and, my friends had a better financial situation than I did. And I would always think to myself like, man, if I'm going to spend this much time doing this, I got to figure out how to make some money doing it. You know what I mean? And that's how I got into the nightclub scene, and I did really well with it, man. And that took off for me, and I broke off on my own. And my promotion company was called ESP, which was Ed Soares Productions, and I started doing nightclubs. And then I did all nightclubs in the South Bay. I started off, and then I moved up to Hollywood, and I was the Friday night promoter at the Roxbury for almost 2 years. Damn. As a matter of fact, I see that poster of Tupac and Tupac used to roll up to my club on Friday nights all the time. Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, the night that Suge bought him a Bentley, the first time I saw Bentley was the time that that Tupac pulled up into the thing, and I saw him and I was like, damn, what kind of car is this? He's like, the Bentley. I said, man, I'd never seen one. He goes, yeah, Suge just bought it for me. And I was like, damn. And then he came up, and he used to be at the club all the time, but that was one of my more successful clubs. I used to do a club called Century Club. I did a club called H2O that was in Manhattan Beach, just no longer there. Century Club. I did just a lot of different clubs. And then I managed bands, and I was actually one of the first managers for a group called the Cottonmouth Kings.
I know the cop. Come on, bro. Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know none of this about you. This is crazy.
So I was one of their first managers.
No, I know somebody that needs a manager. Yeah. But go ahead.
So then I started managing them, and then at the time my clubs were doing well. I was doing a club called Billboard Live, Century Club, and all that. And then my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife, As a matter of fact, you know, this Friday will be our 21st wedding anniversary. So, you know, since then she got pregnant.
What was her name?
Her name's Lynn.
Lynn. Shout out to Lynn.
Yeah. So she got pregnant, and I was about 25, right after my 25th birthday.
You were doing all this promotion for these bands and like these big, but by the age of 25.
Yeah.
Fuck,
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then she gets pregnant.
So she gets pregnant, and then we just signed a deal with Capitol Records with Cottonmouth Kings, and got pregnant. And I was like, damn, like I don't know if this is the right life for me. You know what I mean? Like I want to be a dad, and I don't know if you know, me kissing my baby and putting her to sleep and then going to the nightclub is the smartest thing for me to do. I'm only human, and there's a lot of temptation, and there's just a lot of shit going on. So at that point in time, I made the switch, you know, in the beginning of 1997, you know, beginning of 1997, I decided to step away from the nightclub industry and get into the clothing industry. And I became a sales rep for a few different clothing companies. So when that happened, one of the companies I started working for at the time was a company called SINISTER.
SINISTER.
And then what ended up happening was SINISTER started. It was doing well. It was a clubwear line. It was crazy shit, man. Like shit that most of the shit I wouldn't.
It was a clubwear line.
It was a clubwear line. Like they had like fishnets and vinyl pants and shit like that. Yeah, it was crazy, dude.
Dude,
it was
I'm gonna tell you a funny story, right? Master Joe, my coach, right? When I was a white belt, he had a lot of your patches and stuff, and he would talk about you. And like when I knew the guys out here from Serious Pimp and Tap Out and everything. So when I would compete in jiu-jitsu as a white belt, I had SINISTER, all those, I had my whole gi patch. I look like a fucking NASCAR driver. Yeah. I had white belt. Everybody, the black belts are looking like, who's this guy? And put the white belts on.
Yeah. Well,
but yeah, I used to rock the SINISTER, man.
That's dope, man. So then what happened was at that time, I started working for them and kind of caught on. And SINISTER at that time was the line that I was doing really well with. And then I kind of started moving up there at SINISTER. And this was, you know, through 1997. And then at the end of 1997, the owners of SINISTER, there were two nightclub promoters. One of them was named Mike Messick, who was a big DJ. The other guy's name was Bruce Perdue. They were both nightclub promoters, and one of them owned the Opium Den. They both owned the Opium Den, which is a big club back in the day in Hollywood. And they really didn't pay too much attention to the brand. And I kind of went in there and kind of just cared about it and took care of it, and saw that people were stealing from, and I just kind of cleaned up the brand. Then another friend of mine from Venice named Mike Cassell, at the time, started a clothing company that nobody heard about at the time. He used to be the owner of Bronze Age. Then he started this clothing company. At that time, nobody knew about it, called Von Dutch. Okay. Nobody knew what it was.
I've worn that before.
Yeah. Von Dutch got to be a pretty big brand. So what happened was he was talking to me about it, and he was like, yo, man, I need a sales rep, man. I think I want you to be the national sales rep for them. So I went and interviewed with him, and I got the job as a national sales rep at the beginning of 1998. So January 1998, I got the job. So I came back into SINISTER, and I told Bruce, because by that time, Bruce and Mike kind of went their separate ways. Bruce bought out Mike, and he came and I was kind of I was pretty much running the company for him, because he was really busy doing his nightclubs and doing all that. So then I came in and I said, hey, Bruce, dude, I got this opportunity to be a national sales manager for Von Dutch, and I feel that it's a little bit more down like what I want to do. But dude, I care about your brand, and I just got to tell you that if I leave, dude, you got to find somebody that's going to care about the brand, because like you don't care about it. So you need to find somebody that's going to take care of your shit, because if not, it's going to fall apart like it did when I got here. Yeah. And he goes, okay. So I went into my office, and then about maybe a half hour later, he walks in and he goes, I got an idea. I said, what's that? He said, why don't you take over And I go, well, I said, you know, I remember that conversation so vividly, because I said, listen, Bruce, I just went over all your books, man, and your company's $105,000 in debt.
Damn.
I said, it's $105,000 in debt. And I said, and I could go start a company tomorrow. I said, I'm running your production. I'm doing the sales for it. I said, why would I take on a company that's $105,000 in debt when I could go start a company tomorrow and not have any debt?
Yeah.
And he goes, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. And I said, what's that offer? And he said, I'll take $60,000 in debt and you take the $45,000. The $60,000 in debt was an American Express credit line. The $45,000 in debt was just like $4,000 owed to this fabric person, $3,000 here, that, all these different things. And he said, you take the $45,000, I'll take the American Express $60,000 debt. You pay that off, the company's yours. I just want out. And I said, let me think about this. So over the next few days, I went around to everybody that we owed the money to. And I said to them, and I knew that I just came back with like about $100,000 in orders because I went out and got a bunch of orders. So I went around to all these people that I owed money to. And I said, listen, dude, like this guy's going to go out of business. And I said, but I need to work with you because I got $100,000 in orders. So you need to work with me. And I guarantee you, dude, I'll pay you back every cent. But if I walk away and he goes out of business, you ain't never getting your money. And everyone agreed to work with me. So then I went back to them and I said, okay, I'll do the deal. And on March 10th, 1998, when I took over Sinister, and then I slowly started to redo it. I got money. As a matter of fact, the guy right there, he loaned me, I think it was like 20 G's. 20 G's he pulled, and he
What was his name again?
Ted.
Shout out to Ted.
Yeah.
That's a good friend right there.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes, like, you know, I always say this, sometimes it takes money to make money.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, those people that believe in you and believe in your dream and believe in your vision that step up and help you get to where you go, because sometimes without that extra help, you never amount to getting where you need to get to.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Shout out. Thank you.
So then I took that money and went out there and produced the goods. And that was March 10th, 1998. And July of 1998, I paid the company off with the profits of I shipped all the orders, and with the profits, I did that. And then the company was paid off. I owned it clear and free. And then I started to rebuild Sinister and built it into a real streetwear line. It got away from the clubwear line. We still would have some stuff like that, but it wasn't really what we did. We did more of a streetwear brand. Yeah. And I just, I knew nothing about designing clothes. I knew nothing about that. But, I grew up in one of the dopest places in the world, man. Los Angeles, man. We live in it. So I figured, like, my whole philosophy was, if I make something and me and my friends think it's cool, it's probably pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I'm saying? And that's how it all started. And that's where Sinister went to. And then we built it up, and I ended up selling the company in 2010.
So Sinister, as you were at this time, did you start sponsoring fighters or something?
Yeah,
did you do any martial arts yourself?
Yeah, I trained jiu-jitsu for a long time with Royce.
I didn't know this. Yeah. I'm learning so much today. This has been fucking cool already. So, at what age did you start training with Royce?
I was probably maybe 22, 21.
Oh, wow. Yeah. See, we didn't talk about that part. Yeah. So you started doing jiu-jitsu as you were promoting the clubs and stuff.
Yeah, that's when I started doing jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So,
then would you actually in class with Royce?
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I was really good friends with Royce. As a matter of fact, I got to the point where, like, him and I were friends. So he would go and do seminars, and I'd go with him and help him with his seminars. I was traveling around with him because we'd always do like these cool excursions. Yeah. So we'd go hunting, or we'd go fishing, or we'd go just do crazy fun things. So I would travel around and do that with them. And I was always a big supporter of mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu and fighting and stuff like that. I always liked it. So I started sponsoring fighters and doing that. But that's
how we got the. So that's how I got the patches.
So I was always sponsoring jiu-jitsu tournaments.
Did you ever sponsor my coach?
Joe Moreira. Yeah, man. I would sponsor their tournaments. You know what I mean? So I would always do that. If you noticed all the tournaments, they'd always have the Sinister across the front. And then they would put the
I think he still has some of those things.
So it's like I was a big supporter of it, and I've always loved it. And then and back then, you know, the only other brand that was involved in that was Tap Out, and I was good friends with Charles. And as a matter of fact,
from knowing, sorry to interrupt you, but from knowing Hoist, which is already like for those that don't know, Hoist is like you go do your history, right? So from knowing Hoist. And then you're starting to sponsor fighters, so you're already kind of getting to know everybody in the industry.
Yeah.
And yes, okay. So now it's all making sense to me.
Yeah. So that's how I kind of got into it, and then
you're Brazilian too.
Yeah. So I was Brazilian.
So you had the relationships and
right. So that's how it all started into the fight business, and then when I really got into doing working in the mixed martial arts business was back in 2003, because you know, we started sponsoring fighters, and you know, I used to manufacture.
You remember your first fighter that you sponsored?
The first fighter that I sponsored.
Was there, but like a lot at a
time? Actually, it was a lot of jiu-jitsu guys. But one of the guys that we first started sponsoring was a guy who passed away too. His name's Matt Hall. I don't know if you remember him, but he was a crazy dude, man. He was a good dude, man. His name was Matt Hall. But we sponsored a lot of different fighters, you know? And then
so you just got into it,
and then got into it, and slowly got into it, and then what ended up happening was the first big fighter that I really started sponsoring was Chuck Liddell.
Oh shit!
And Chuck Liddell used to always have that. So what happened with Chuck? You know, the icicles on his shorts that he has. I designed those for him.
No shit.
Yeah. I was the one who designed those.
That's crazy.
Because what happened was that at that time Tito had flames on his shorts. And I was like, yo, dude, like, you're the Iceman, dude. If Tito's got flames on his shorts, you gotta have icicles on your shorts. Yeah. And he goes, well, man, I never had it. Why don't you make some up? And I made some in black shorts and in blue shorts. And Chuck was always was very superstitious about things. So he's like, man, the black ones look killer, but I always wore blue shorts. And at the time, Tap Out was sponsoring him too. And I got to be pretty good friends with Charles. So I used to manufacture 80% of all the cut and sew stuff that Tap Out produced.
Wow.
I used to cut and sew for them. So I used to manufacture it all for them. As a matter of fact, like all those clothing brands from Warrior Wear to Throwdown.
I used to wear the Warrior shorts too all the time.
Yeah, I used to manufacture all of those for those guys because that was one of the things I was really good at was manufacturing.
What happened to Warrior? I love those.
They went out of business.
For those of you that don't remember, everybody used to want to wear those shorts. It was that one, and then the sprawl ones. The sprawl ones.
Sprawl ones were good.
Back.
Yeah. Sprawl were good shorts too. And
I miss those. And then they don't make shorts like those anymore.
Yeah, they don't. And then for us, you know, we were a streetwear brand, but we used to manufacture. So my whole thing was like I used to always say like Sinister is what the fighters wear when they're not fighting. Yeah. Because my theory was like, man, you're only in the ring 15 minutes. You know, I want what these guys wear after they're fighting. You know what I mean? And that's how it all kind of started. And I manufacture all those things. And
Chuck shorts were dope. Those are iconic.
Yeah, they're iconic now. You know, I designed those, and I'll tell you, man, Chuck is one of the most loyal fighters in the world, dude. Like,
I love that guy,
when
he really brought so many eyes to the sport that like people like my generation, like people fell in love with the sport because of that dude.
And he never changed, man. No matter how much success he had, he was always the down-to-earth, humble dude that he's always been. He's always been real. He's always been good, and he's loyal. And he's one of the loyalest guys. Like when he was at the peak of his career, I can remember talking to his manager, and his manager said, man, I don't know what you and the guys from Tap Out did to Chuck, but he told the guys, he says, you guys could do whatever you guys want to my shorts. But the icicles are staying on, the Sinister S and the Tap Out, those aren't coming off. I don't care what you guys do. You guys could do whatever you want with sponsored everything, but those are always going to stay on. And you know what, man? I love Chuck for that. And he's always been a very, very loyal guy. And he's an incredible human being, man. Yeah. And they, you know, he was a real fighter, dude.
He was a fighter. He's a fighter's fighter.
He would fight anybody, anytime. He didn't care.
Fun to watch.
He was a stud. He used his wrestling not to take people down. He used his wrestling to stay standing up and knock people out. And he was, he's a great dad. So that's how it all started. So how I got it really into the mixed martial arts business to make money is I went over with Chuck Liddell to Japan when he went to represent the UFC in Pride in 2003.
Fight Rampage?
Or Fight Rampage.
Oh,
the first time I ever went to Japan, I went with Hoist. And I went with Hoist when he fought Sakuraba. That was the fight I went with him for.
Damn.
And then I went to Japan with Chuck when he was going to fight Rampage. And Rampage was my homie too, because I used to sponsor him and make shorts for him and do all that.
I love
Rampage. But Rampage is great, man.
He got a great podcast now too.
He does, man. Yeah. Good for him, man.
Shout out to Rampage.
Yeah, he's a good dude. And
what up, everybody? Want to take a quick second out of the podcast just to give a shout out to our sponsor, the best criminal defense attorney I know. The last time I got in trouble, I needed somebody that was going to look into my case and actually fight for me and get me the best deal possible. And he did that. And I'll make sure that he does that for you. Make sure you shout me out if you guys reach out to him, to the sponsor of the Convo. You know anybody, a family member or yourself that make a mistake, you want somebody like him on your side. Arash, please let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
Thank you. Arash Hashemi, 310-448-1529. Or HashemiLaw.com, HashemiLaw.com, or just Google hashtag Better Call Hash. Remember that, Better Call Hash. You'll find me on every social media channel all over the internet. 310-448-1529.
You better call Hash.
And so I went over there with Chuck, and I ran into this guy, George, who was my business partner in the management company. And he produced a show called Passando a Guarda in Brazil, which is translated into passing the guard.
Yeah.
So then what happened was I was over there and I was in his hotel room. And the cool thing about George is George was my next door neighbor when I was 15 years old. So I met him when I was 15. My mom introduced me to him, and we always stayed in contact. And he would always wear my brand on his TV show in Brazil. So when I was over in Japan, I saw him there. And we were sitting in his room, and I remember he had a camera, and I said, "Hey, dude, what camera is that?" And he said, "It's the Sony PD-150. I said, "Dude, that's the camera I want to get." He goes, "Why do you want that for?" And mind you, this is in 2003. And I was like, "Because, dude, I want this camera because on our website, I don't want just to have the picture of the different surfers and skaters and fighters that we sponsor. I want to show video footage of them. I want people to see their personality."
Yes.
And he goes, "Oh, cool." So I'm looking at the camera. He goes, "You know what? I don't have a cameraman this week. You want to be my cameraman?" I said, "Yeah." And I was thinking to myself, man, I'm going to learn how to use this camera on the go, like on the fly. Yeah. So I'm like down. So at that week I was there, and I was basically, filming everything for him. And the whole week I had, what a cool experience. I was behind the scenes and got to see all this stuff. And then I remember telling George, I said, "Hey, George, who's doing your interviews for you in the US?" And he goes, "Oh man, we don't have a budget for that." And I go, I know, but I'm just asking you, who's doing your interviews? He goes, "I ain't got nobody doing it." And I go, "Dude, I'll do them for you." He goes, "We ain't got a budget." I said, "I don't need a budget. I'm going to all these shows anyway." And what I was thinking is I'll do the interview wearing my brand.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to promote my brand while I'm doing the interview. So it's marketing for my brand.
100%.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. I wasn't thinking like I'm going to need to get paid for it. So then I flew home. That was November of 2003. When I get home, I called George and I was like, "Hey, dude, I'm still down to do the interview," but I was like thinking to myself, let's bring your show to the US. And he was kind of like, "Yeah, okay, dude. Sure. All right. Let's try it." And next thing you know, in April of 2004, I got a deal with KDOC. KDOC was a channel in Orange County.
I remember.
And I remember going there with the VHS tape with the show with Brazilian production. And it was a good produced show because it was produced by Globo out there, which is a big network. So I took the VHS tape there, popped it in the video, and I turned down the volume because everything was in Portuguese. But I just wanted to talk over it because I knew that, it was a good produced show.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there talking to the guys at KDOC, and I go, "Yeah, this is the show. It's a mixed martial arts show, blah, blah, blah." And he's looking at it and he goes, "Oh man, this is pretty produced well." And then he turns it up and I go, "But it's going to be in English."
Right.
And he goes, "Oh, okay. I get it. Okay." He goes, "Cool, man. I'll give you Saturday nights at midnight from 12 to 12:30, and I'll only charge you $1,000. I was like, what? So you want me to give you a show and me pay you $1,000? And he's like, yeah, you're doing what they call time buy. I'm like, all right, man, let me get back to you. So I'm driving from Orange County to LA. How do they do this? Like, I don't get it. And I was like, and then I go, wait a second. I know, they sell commercials. And then at the time I called Charles from Tap Out and I said, hey, dude, I got this crazy idea. I want to do an MMA show. Mind you that the UFC was not on TV then.
Yeah.
So I said, Charles, I got this crazy idea. I want to bring this show from Brazil. These guys want to charge me $1,000 a week for the show. But what I'm thinking is I get 30 minutes. I said, let's make the show 24 minutes. We'll make 6 minutes of commercials. So that means it's 12 30-second commercials. I said, if you put in $500 a week, I'll put in $500 for Sinister and we'll each get 6 commercials. You down? He goes, shit, I'm down. Let's do it. And then April of 2004, we launched Passing the Guard. And it took off. And mind you that it was the first MMA show on free television. And that's how it all started. And by the end of the first season, so the season was 13 weeks. So we had to sign for a 13-week deal. By the end of the first season, we were the second highest rated show in LA, Orange County. So KDOC at the time covered about 5.5 million homes. It would cover all LA County, all of Orange County, the northern part of San Diego County, and the southern tip of Ventura County, but it hit about 5.5 million homes. So after the first season, we were the second highest rated show Saturday nights at midnight. The only show that beat us was Saturday Night Live. Every other show in that market, we were beating everybody.
Yeah.
So then by that time, then Dana reaches out to me. He's like, yo, dude, what's going on? And, we started talking and I said, hey man, I could start covering your shows and we could start doing that. And so my relationship with Dana went way before I started representing fighters. It was really helping promote the UFC get big. So really, Charles from Tap Out and Sinister were the ones who funded the first show to be on TV. And that's how it all started. And then it got to the point where that started going well. And we started building a great relationship with all these organizations because we were promoting them.
Yeah.
And then I was building a really good relationship with the fighters. And my business partner at the time, George Joinha, he's got a huge history in the sport. He came here in 1979 from Brazil with Jorge Gracie to spread the word of jiu-jitsu. So his history and his credibility in the sport, I'd have to say that I wouldn't have gotten the respect as quick as I would have in the sport if it wasn't for him, because he had so much credibility in the sport. So he was in Brazil, I was here, so I'm hustling over here, and he's getting dudes over there, and then I was like, yo, dude, like, why don't we start representing these?
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, and he's like, okay, and I was like, dude, I was representing bands. I go, representing a band or representing a fighter is the same shit. They both got to put asses in seats. One's got to sell records. The other's got to sell pay-per-views. It's the same formula.
Crazy.
I'm like, let's do it. And he goes, okay. And that's how it all, and that's how, that's why the management company was called Tough Media, because we started with a TV show.
What a good decision you made at that time. Like, and what excuse me, but to me, that's probably one of the coolest professions ever. You could be a manager of some of the, because you have like a storied career when it comes to being a manager as well. When you started representing people, like I'm one of my favorites. I'm going to bring it up. Well, a couple of my favorites. I'll bring them up right off the bat. Lyoto Machida and Anderson Silva. You were there. I remember seeing you in the cage with Anderson, I think, in almost all of his fights in the UFC.
Yeah. I was, and I ended up, like, a lot of people thought I was his translator, but I was really his manager, and I just by default started translating for him because they didn't have translator at the time, so he didn't speak English.
You did that for free. They should have paid you for that.
I just did it. Yeah, man, it was a pleasure, man. Like I said, I'm just happy to have been able to be a part of the sport. And
would you also go to his training sessions and stuff?
No, because he trained in Brazil a lot,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So he trained in Brazil, but I mean, you know, at Sinister, we had an octagon inside our warehouse. So
when it was like, out here to fight?
Yeah, everyone was trained. Everyone was training in the Sinister warehouse. So we'd be shipping clothes out, and there'd be people training in the octagon. You know,
so you started becoming very popular as far as a manager, because a lot of the Brazilian fighters were, you know, were already kind of known, and you had the relationships.
Well, yeah, George was really like, George was the kind of conduit with all my partner George, because he was the one that had the respect of everybody there. They didn't know me from anybody in the beginning, you know, but he was the one that he knew me since I was a kid. You know what I mean? So he knew that, you know, I was a go-getter, and I would go, and I was honest and you know, honesty and loyal,
yeah,
and
these
good
heart,
are the
man. Quality traits that, you know.
Yeah, then that's the same way George is. You know, I mean, listen, George and I are very different, but there's certain characteristics of a man that George and I had, and they were the same. And we were both loyal, we were both honest, we were both good-hearted people, and that's how it all started.
Which led you to becoming the representative, the manager of many of the best guys in the sport, the who's who of the sport, which is awesome in its own. And then so you become the manager of all these guys. And then my favorite part about all this is LFA.
Yeah, well, it actually, before it was LFA, it started off with RFA. And
I remember that.
Yeah, RFA,
that was yours as well.
Yeah, RFA I was the president of RFA.
I thought that was a different.
No, it was RFA, and then RFA, and that's a whole story in itself. But then RFA, and then
what made you want to make the transition?
Well, because I was a promoter, I promoted events, so it was like a natural transition. I always thought that would be the next thing for me to do, would be
after managing
fighters to go back to promoting events. It was something I was good at, and I liked it.
You've done it when it comes to
managing. I'd manage bands and manage clubs. It was the same thing. You got to get people. You got to make people come to your shit.
Yeah,
and that's how it all started. And then RFA did well. We had to deal with Access TV.
And Dana White's always been cool with you, right? So
when you first started back in 2012, when I became the president of the RFA, I was the first promoter. You go back, man. People could say whatever they want, but I was the first promoter out there saying, I want to be a developmental organization for the UFC. 100%. I was the first one saying it. Everyone else at the time was saying, oh yeah, we're going to compete. You ain't going to fucking compete with them. No, you know what I mean?
Why even say that?
Because that's what they thought. They thought.
Why not try to be an ally, or
Well, for me, I didn't even want to do that. Yeah. What I wanted to do is I wanted to develop fighters, because I realized that there was these guys fighting in high school gymnasiums one week, and then 3 weeks later they get the call to go fight in the UFC, and they're walking out in the Staples Center in front of 20,000 people, and they weren't used to it. So I wanted to develop them,
give them that environment, give them the feel of what the big show is going to look like.
And that's one of the things that I think why, you know, and so that's how it all started. And so we were the first ones to ever say that. Now everybody says they're a developmental league, but you know what I mean? I guess imitation is the greatest. You know, I learned that in the apparel business. When people start copying your shit, you got to be flat. Even though I get fucking pissed off, but it's really the biggest form of flattery. So now everybody's saying it, but it's like, oh, thanks. You know, I would look back and see. You go back to 2012, go back and see articles that were spoken to all these different people that were doing shows. I was the first one saying it. We were the first ones, and then in 2016, Legacy was also on Access TV, and Mick Maynard, which is now the UFC matchmaker, we decided to merge our companies together, and then we formed the LFA, which was launched in 2017,
which is the Legacy Fighting Alliance.
Yeah, so it used to be the RFA, which is Resurrection Fighting Alliance, and Legacy Fighting Championship. I always thought Legacy was a better name than Resurrection. I didn't make up the name.
Legacy is a very good name.
Yes. So then we took we took Legacy from that. Fighting was the middle name in both of them, because it was Resurrection Fighting Alliance, Legacy Fighting Championship, and then we took Alliance from RFA. And that's how LFA was formed. It was Legacy Fighting Alliance. And that's how the LFA was formed in 2017. As a matter of fact, it was January 13th, 2017 was our first LFA, LFA 1.
And I know LFA's been like on Fight Pass like immediately, right?
No, we were on Access. We were on Access TV until 2019. And then Access is, I don't know.
It's gone.
And to be honest with you, I don't really care because they did us wrong.
Oh, man.
And
that's a story for another day.
Yeah, it doesn't even. I don't even want to waste my time with that name.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it all worked out. We're blessed. The only regret I have about getting on Fight Pass in 2019, the only regret is I wish I would have been there earlier. Because it's been a great, incredible partnership, and I'm blessed to be in business with those guys. I've been in business with Dana White for over 20 years with different things, and he's a great guy to do business with, man.
And it's a great, and I believe like having your show on LFA, having LFA on UFC Fight Pass is the smartest route you could go, especially for what you're trying to do, which is bring guys that. That next level look before they get to the UFC. And a lot of people watch UFC Fight Pass. So they're getting seen a lot more than they would.
100%. And we were actually the first, as the RFA, we were the first organization to actually license the Octagon from the UFC. So we were the first organization out there that really had a license through the UFC, and that carried on into the LFA, that we were the first ones to have the Octagon as a cage because they own the Octagon. Yeah. And so we
you
were
guys
able
were allowed
to
to have.
Yeah, we have a license from them. Cool. So that's where the LFA is now. And our vision was always to be the #1 developmental organization in the world, and I'm proud to say that we've achieved that, man. Now, statistically, factually, we are the #1 developmental organization in the world.
Not just talking facts.
It's facts, dude. It's facts. There's no like.
Let it be known.
There's no question. There's no question. People could say whatever they want to say. 100%. But let's look at the numbers, man. We've put over 300 people into the UFC.
Numbers talk.
We've got a 59% retention rate out of 310 people we've sent to the UFC. 170 of them are still there.
Damn.
And so on top of that, currently 25% of their champions are LFA alumni. 34% of the current UFC roster are LFA alumni. So there's no question of there's no question. People can say whatever they want to say. Let's look at I don't even need to talk. Let's look at numbers, homie. Let's look at numbers. Numbers don't lie. Yeah. So that's that. We are the #1 developmental organization in the world, and that's what I wanted to be. So now people are like, well, what's next? Well, what's next is I want to look at the way people look at the UFC and every other organization is the way I want people to look at the LFA and every other organization that says they're a developmental organization. There ain't no question who the #1 is. We are. And that's my goal, is just keep getting better, trying to, bring in more money to be able to pay these fighters more, treat these guys better, make our production better, and try to get as close as we can to being like a UFC and develop this talent. Even I don't ever want to compete with the UFC, not because I don't want to compete. It's just because I really enjoy helping these athletes get, you look at a show like this past week in Mexico City, 5 of our champions fought in that show. Okay. In the main event and the co-main event, 3 of the 4 people that competed in the co-main event and main event were 3 of our champions. Brandon Royval, Brandon Moreno, both LFA champions. Brian Ortega, RFA champion. So it's underneath that umbrella.
Crazy, man.
So for us, man, nothing makes me happy.
Those fights were fucking great.
Yeah, they're on fire. But that's the thing. In the LFA, we're battle-tested fighters. We don't put together smash fights.
No,
we don't do that. If you're gonna, and that's why the organizations know that if you're winning fights in the LFA, you're really winning fights.
You're ready for that.
You're really winning fights, and that's why the organizations feel comfortable doing that. And another thing is that I don't come from being a fight promoter. I come from being a manager. So I think about the fighter first. That's what's important, and that's what people seem to forget. Sometimes promoters think, well, how many money? Yeah, of course you got to make money, but at the end of the day, man, if you don't have talent, you don't teach the fighters you don't treat them right, what good is having a badass show with shitty fighters, man?
I think a lot of people forget that, after, these guys that, I have a lot of friends that are fighters, and after they're done fighting, it's not just those fights that they have, it's those training sessions that they have. They get hit in the head. They put their whole life, there's a lot more than what people see, and they deserve everything that they get plus more, in my belief. So that's really cool that, you treat your fighters like that, and that you actually care like that.
We try to do the best we can for them. I'd like to do more, but you know what? In time we will, man. That's the goal.
As the sport continues to grow, the more money is in the sport, the more we'll be able to, have
100%, man. That's what I'd like to do, and that's the goal, is to keep developing these guys and keep developing the best talent coming from the LFA. You know what I mean? That's where my focus is now. That's where my goal is.
And you guys have like a calendar set up ahead of time.
We're doing 25 shows a year now. We're not, people's like, we're not we're an international show, man. We do 6 shows a year in Brazil and 19 shows domestically.
I know you got a friend of mine that goes to the Brazil ones. I've seen him. Shout out to Alan Goes.
Yeah, he actually hasn't been to the Brazil ones. Actually,
no. Okay. I see him talking Portuguese.
But he does the Portuguese broadcast, because we do 2 broadcasts. We do an English broadcast and a Portuguese broadcast. And Alan Goes is one of the commentators that we use in the Portuguese commentary.
Hell yeah. Man, that's awesome, bro. I think what a cool history you have, that even for me today has been I learned so much about stuff, and now I know who to start talking to about getting me a manager for my music, what I'm saying? But what a crazy, from the beginning, that man, you wanted to be a firefighter, and you had this dream, and then all of a sudden it's taken away from you. So you have to readjust, and then you go through this, the club scene, and then to the, it's just crazy how you got to, where you got to, and all the stuff you've done, and all the amazing champions you've been around, and now you have a fight promotion that's on UFC Fight Pass, and it's got my name that I've I told you earlier.
It was named after you, man.
But yeah, so man, we big support for you, and what a cool story, brother. And what you're doing for these fighters is amazing, because I think people that put their heart and soul into something like mixed martial arts, they need more people like you around, more when you were a manager, more managers like you were, to help people become champions and get to where they want to go and achieve their goals, because nobody can do these types of things on their own.
It takes a village, man. It's not, and like I said, the LFA, I'm the CEO, and I'm maybe the one that gets the credit for it. But I'll tell you right now, man, I'm just one of the little parts of what makes the LFA successful. I've got my business partner Sven, who's the president of the LFA, who's had an incredible amount of experience promoting fights. He was a promoter of an event called Ring of Fire in Colorado, and that was the event that started off Donald Cerrone, Justin Gaethje, Shane Carwin. And so he's got an extensive experience in that. Then you've got Mark Berry, my other partner, who is our matchmaker also. And just everybody that's involved in the team, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm really, I'm the guy that gets all the credit for it, but sometimes, but I got to tell you, man, I'm nothing without my team. You know 100%. What I mean? I really am. I'm just one of the spokes in the wheel. You know what I'm saying? And at any given time, the different spokes are just as important, and every spoke is important to make the wheel roll perfectly.
100%.
100%.
On that note, my brother, thank you for being here today. Thank you for letting me know, and my audience know about your history, and I'm very excited to have had you here today to hear your story. We could have talked about so much more about it. That leaves us open to definitely talk again. And LFA, got any shows coming up very soon here?
You know what? Our next show is in Santa Cruz.
Next show coming up in Santa Cruz. Is there a website? You guys can check
LFA.com.
LFA.com. UFC Fight Pass. You guys can watch LFA. Ed Soares on Instagram. Thank you, my brother.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
This has been awesome.
Man.
I got to hear some really cool stories, and hopefully, you know, there's some way I can convince you to manage the Persian legacy, because I got some dope ass music, and I got, you know, album coming out, and my brother, it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me, man. For real.
We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
All right.
You guys, like, subscribe, tell your mama and your daddy and your auntie and your cousins too. Peace. We'll see you on the next one.